Hi angels, hope you're doing well. Today we are doing a video all about making extra cash. Who doesn't want extra cash? And I'm talking about how I do that on Poshmark. I think I look a little bit orange. I went a little bit ham with the self tanner. This is what quarantine does to you people. This video is actually a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. Now, when I first started out, I didn't know any of this stuff. And I found this out through trial and error, through talking to other people on Poshmark, seeing what works for them, seeing what works for me. So I'm basically giving you a bunch of tips and tricks that I've had to spend months figuring out. So if you're starting Poshmark after watching this video, you're already ahead of the game. We're actually going to do this in a multi-part series. So this is going to be part 1. This is all about getting started on Poshmark, and I will be posting part 2 very soon. Okay, so step 1 may seem obvious, but we're going to start from scratch here. So the very first thing you need to do is make an account on Poshmark. And if you use my code JSApproved, you'll get a $15 shopping credit to spend on anything you want on Poshmark. Once you've signed up for an account, step 2 is making your very first listing. So it can be anything you want, from makeup to clothing to home items. Poshmark has tons of different categories of items. There are only a few things that you really can't sell on Poshmark. They don't recommend selling any sort of perfume, nail polish. Other than that, it's really fair game. So when you're doing your listing, there are certain categories in the description that you absolutely have to have. So you have to include a title, you have to include a description, you have to include the category, you have to include the size. The brand is optional, but I highly recommend including the brand because people will search up brands and find your items. So if it's a brand like Sephora, that's a great one to include. A little tip is that if it's anything from Sephora, I use the Sephora category because I find more people search Sephora than they do some of the smaller brands that are sold on Sephora. And of course, you can't forget the picture for your listing. So you need to have a photo. The more photos, the better. So one thing that you may run into problems with is things will look different in different lighting. So I always try to take a photo in natural lighting, A, because it looks the best, and B, because it really shows the true color of the item. When it comes to photos, I try to include a photo from the brand's website, which usually looks really good. It's a picture of a model wearing the item or a picture of a swatch of the item if it's a makeup item. So it really will give buyers an idea of the true color and fit of an item. When it comes to photos, I would search online for a photo from the brand's actual website. Then I would include a photo of your actual item in natural lighting if that's possible. If it's not possible, I would try to use the best lighting possible. Make sure it's not in a dark room. Sometimes if you take a picture of an item in a dark room, the color can appear completely different than it is. And then when the buyer receives their item, they could complain that the color is not what they thought it would be. So try to describe and photograph the item in as many ways possible. So let's use an example of a lipstick. So for example, I have a Charlotte Tilbury lipstick that I just sold on Poshmark. So for that lipstick, I included a photo from Charlotte Tilbury's website. I included a swatch from Charlotte Tilbury's website. I also included a photo of my lipstick. I also included the shade name and description of the shade in the description bar. So that gives the buyer many opportunities to figure out what the color is, because you don't want them to get the item and claim it's not what they thought it was, and then they will try to return it. They will open a case with Poshmark. I have had this happen with one of my items, and trust me, it's not an easy process. It takes weeks and weeks and weeks. So you want to make sure you are describing the item in as many ways as possible. You may think that this is redundant. Trust me, it's not. You want to make sure the buyer knows exactly what they are going to get in the mail. The more photos, the better. And take photos in different lighting, take photos off the website, take your own photos. Describe the color. So if you don't think that the color is showing up in natural light the way it really looks, say it's a lip gloss, say it's a purple pink lip gloss, describe it as a purple/pink lip gloss. So now you have your photos, you have described the item, you have given the item a title, include the size, of course. Sometimes people will include the sizing guide as one of their photos. That's a really good option as well. So you can actually take a screenshot of the brand sizing guide off their website and include that as one of your photos so that people can see, will this fit me? Another thing that a lot of people do on Poshmark is they'll include measurements. So they'll take a measuring tape and measure out the item. This takes quite a long time. So with me, I actually tend to wait to have people ask if they want measurements. If they do want measurements, I'll go ahead and post those. So now you have your first listing. So I would go ahead and repeat that with as many listings as you have. I personally have 700 listings. I have 700 listings, but your listings include all of your listings. So that includes listings that have sold and listings that are currently available. So although I have over 700 listings, about 300 of those have already sold. So if someone goes on my closet, they can see not only the items I have for sale, but the items that I've sold as well. So continue to do that and get as many items up as possible. Poshmark does not make this exactly easy to keep your items in order. So if you make any changes to items or you share an item to a party or share it to your followers, it's going to appear first in your feed. So you want to make sure that whenever you're sharing items, that you're sharing them in the order you want them to stay in. If you guys have any other questions, of course, leave them in the comments below. So once you get started, you'll kind of get a feel for it. Once you start sharing items, you'll see how it works. So I mentioned parties, and now we're going to get into parties a little more in depth. So parties are really important on Poshmark. When I first started on Poshmark, I didn't understand really how parties worked. And I also thought that they wouldn't really help. And I thought that you had to keep sharing your item to the party over and over again, which both of those things are not true at all. So Poshmark parties are really important. There are different Poshmark parties every single day. So they'll have parties for different categories. Poshmark parties are typically category specific, which means you can only share items from that specific category to the party. Again, I know this sounds confusing, but I'm going to try to explain it in the best way possible. So if there is a best of men's Poshmark party, you can only share items that are in the men's category. It will not let you share makeup items. It will not let you share women's clothing. Each day, what I like to do when I wake up in the morning is I check out all of the parties happening that day. So every day it's different. Some days it's best of makeup, some days it's men's, some days it's home. I like to know what's happening that day each day when I wake up. So like with anything, you're gonna get what you put into it. So if you're serious about Poshmark, you're serious about making extra money, you wanna make this a side hustle, you will get out what you put into it. It's like that with any app, really. It's like that with Instagram, it's like that with YouTube, it's like that with anything. So is it work? Yes. Does it pay off? 100%. At least for me, I find it has. So when I wake up in the morning, I like to check out the parties happening that day so I can kind of plan out my day and know what I need to be sharing at what times. So best case scenario is you have items in every single category. That way, no matter what party's happening, you have something to share. Parties are a way for a bunch of people on Poshmark to all share items in the same category. So you have a ton of people. For the parties last about 2 hours. So for 2 hours, you have a ton of people sharing all their items that fit in that category. Parties are a really great way to sell more stuff, really in the end. By getting more eyes on your items, you're going to sell more. So I highly recommend paying attention to what parties are happening and making sure you are participating in them. Now, the most important party of the day is the party that happens at 11 o'clock my time. So depending on where you live in the world. So 11 o'clock Atlantic time, 10 o'clock Eastern time, etc., etc. Now, every night they have a Posh party where it's basically a free-for-all. So you can share whatever you want to this party. I share all my items to this party. As long as I don't fall asleep beforehand, I typically stay up and make sure I share every single item I have to this party. Typically, I'll wake up with new bundles, new sales. The best feeling, waking up and seeing that you've sold items and you've made money, is an amazing feeling. Maybe wondering, okay, what's the catch here? Now, you don't have to pay to list items. You don't have to pay to be on Poshmark. The only time you have to pay is when you sell items. So really, you have nothing to lose. So until you sell something, you don't have to pay Poshmark anything. It's free to have. until you start selling items. And then Poshmark does take a cut. I believe it's about 20%. It's the same no matter what you sell. If you're selling items that are, you know, a couple $100s, you're gonna be giving out a bigger portion of your sales to Poshmark. But you don't have to pay to ship the items. That is a huge thing. So some of you who follow me on Instagram may have seen me doing Shop My Stash sales, where I was selling items from my stash, makeup and beauty items, and I was doing free shipping over $50. So if anyone bought $50 worth of items, I would ship the item for free and pay for that out of my own pocket. Now, anyone who lives in Canada knows shipping is so incredibly expensive. So even to ship a tiny little envelope, you're looking at least $10. So that is cutting into your profit. Now, when you use Poshmark, the buyer is actually paying for shipping. So the buyer pays $12.99 shipping unless you give them a shipping discount. That's another thing I haven't talked about yet. I keep thinking of new things I haven't discussed. So unless you give them a shipping discount, which cuts into your profit, that's a way of kind of encouraging buyers to buy your item, they are paying $12.99 shipping. Once you sell an item, Poshmark actually creates the label for you with your return mailing address and their mailing address and sends you the label. So all you have to do is print the label out, stick it on the package, take it to the post office, and you're good to go. So you do not have to pay for shipping, which is a huge, huge plus. So for me, having to pay that 20% to Poshmark is so worth it because it's actually less than what I would pay to ship the item. Shipping is so incredibly expensive that this is a great way to sell your stuff across the country and not have to pay to ship it. Okay, so I feel like we totally got off on another tangent here. So let's go back to listing. So now you've listed your items, you've started sharing them to parties. Make sure during the day you're also sharing them to your followers. So this is something I had no idea about when I started Poshmark. I thought you just put your listings up and left them and hoped that someone would magically come across them. Now that is something you can do, but you probably won't get many sales. And I didn't get many sales in the beginning, and I was wondering, like, what's the hype with Poshmark? Nobody's buying my stuff. And it was because I was just posting them and leaving them. You have to be sharing to parties. You have to be sharing to your followers. So I would suggest at least once a day, you're sharing all your items to your followers. So not only when you're sharing them to your followers does it get new eyes on your listings, but it also encourages your followers to share them as well. So a big thing with Poshmark is returning the favor. So if someone shares your items, it's probably a good idea to go and share some of their items as well. And it's a great way to get your items in front of new people and also build your following. So if you're sharing someone else's items, say they have 10,000 followers. I have 11,000 followers on Poshmark, which I'm very proud of. But say you share someone else's items. They will typically return the favor and share your items. So if they have 10,000 followers, you're getting your items in front of potentially 10,000 new people. Will all those people see your items? No, it's like anything else. There's an algorithm and Poshmark will decide what it puts in front of what people. They also have to be looking at their feed at the right time, et cetera, et cetera. But you're still getting it in front of new people. You're going to get new followers. You're going to get new bundles. You're hopefully going to get new sales. So that is important to be sharing stuff to your followers all the time. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you learned something new about Poshmark today. If you do sign up and get started, please let me know in the comments below. If you're already on Poshmark, let me know about your experience and what you thought about it. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.